The poor and middle class don't have the same resources. They sit there and let the government needles enter their arm and allow the blood donation to begin. Today, I am constantly shocked at the number of people who pay more taxes or take fewer deduction simply because they are afraid of the government. I have friends who have had their business shut down and destroyed only to find out it was a mistake on the part of the government. I realize all that, but the price of working from January to May is a high price to pay for that intimidation. My poor dad never fought back. My rich dad didn't either. He just played the game smarter. He did it through corporations, the biggest secret of the rich. You may remember the first lesson I learned from my rich dad when I was a little boy of 9 who had to sit and wait for him to choose to talk to me. I sat in his office waiting for him to get to me. He was ignoring me on purpose. He wanted me to recognize his power and to desire to have the power for myself one day. During all the years I studied and learned from him, he always reminded me that that knowledge is power. And with money comes great power. And that requires the right knowledge to keep it and to multiply it. Without that knowledge, the world pushes you around. Rich Dad constantly reminded me, Mike and me, that the biggest bully was not the boss or the supervisor, but the taxman. The taxman will always take more if you let him. The first lesson of having money work for you as opposed to you working for money is all about power. If you work for money, you give power to your employer. If money works for you, you keep the power and control it. Once we had this knowledge of the power of money working for us, he wanted us to be financially smart and not let anyone or anything push us around. If you're ignorant, it's easy to be bullied. If you know what you're talking about, you have a fighting chance. That's why he paid so much for smart tax accountants and attorneys. It was less expensive to pay them than to pay the government. His best lesson to me was be smart and you won't be pushed around as much. He knew the law because he was law abiding citizen and because it was expensive to not know the law. If you know you are right, you're not afraid of fighting back, even if you're taking on Robin Hood and his band of merry men. My highly educated dad always encouraged me to land a good job with a strong corporation. He spoke of the virtues of working your way up the corporate ladder. He didn't understand that by relying solely on the paycheck from a corporate employer, I would be docile cow ready for milking. When I told my rich dad about of my father's advice, he only chuckled. Why not own the ladder? Was all he said. As a young boy, I did not understand what rich dad meant by owning my own corporations. It was an idea that seemed impossible and intimidating. Although I was excited by the idea, my inexperience wouldn't let me envision the possibility that grown ups would someday work for a company I would own. The point is that if not for my rich dad, I would have probably followed my educated dad's advice. It was merely the occasional reminder of my rich dad that kept the idea of owning my own corporation alive and kept me on a different path. By the time I was 15 or 16, I knew I wasn't going to continue down the path of my educated dad recommended. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was determined not to head in the direction most of my classmates were heading. The decision changed my life. It was not until my mid 20s that my rich dad's advice began to make more sense to me. I was just out of the Marine Corps and working for Xerox. I was making a lot of money, but every time I looked at my paycheck, I was disappointed. The deduction were so large, and the more I worked, the greater they become. So, as I become as I became more successful, my boss talked about promotions and raises. It was flattering, and I could hear my rich dad asking in my ear, Who are you working for? Who are you making rich? In 1974, while still an employee of Xerox, I formed my first corporation and began minding my own business. There were already a few assets in my asset column, but now I was determined to focus on making it big. Those paycheck with all the deductions made all the years of my rich dad's advice make total sense. I could see the future if I followed my educated dad's advice. Many employers feel that advising their worker to mind their own business is a bad for business, but for me, focusing on my own business and developing assets made me a better employee because I now had a purpose. I came in early and worked diligently, amassing as much money as possible as I could invest in real estate. Hawaii was just set to boom, and there were fortunes to be made. The more I realized that we were in the beginning stage of a boom, the more Xerox machines I sold. The more I sold, the more money I made. And of course, the more deduction came out of my paycheck. It was inspiring. I wanted out of the employee trap so badly that I worked even harder so I could invest more. By 1978, I was constantly one of the top five salespeople at the company. I badly wanted out of the rat race. In less than 3 years, I was making more in my real estate holding corporations than I was making it at Xerox. And the money I was making in my asset column and in my own corporation was money working for me, not me pounding on doors selling copiers. My rich dad's advice made much more sense. Soon, the cash flow from my properties was so strong that my company bought me my first Porsche. My fellow Xerox salespeople thought I was spending my commission. I wasn't. I was investing my commission in assets, and my money was working hard to make more money. Each dollar in my asset column was a great employee which worked hard to make more employees and buy the boss a new Porsche with before tax dollars. I began to work harder for Xerox, and the plan was working, and my Porsche was the proof. By using the lesson I learned from my rich dad, I was able to get out of the proverbial rat race at an early age. It was made possible because of the strong financial knowledge I had acquired through rich dad's lesson. Without this financial knowledge, which I call financial intelligence or financial IQ, my road to financial independence would have been much more difficult. I now teach others in the hope that I may share my knowledge. I remind people the financial IQ is made up of knowledge from four broad area of expertise: accounting, investing, understanding market, the law. Accounting. Accounting is the financial literacy or the ability to read numbers. This is vital skill. If you want to build an empire, the more money you're responsible for, the more accurate the more accuracy is required, or the house comes tumbling down. This is the left brain side or the detail. The financial literacy is the ability to read and understand financial statement, which allows you to identify the strength and weakness of any business. Investing. Investing is the science of making more money or money making money. This involves strategies and formulas which use the creative right brain side. Understanding market is the science of supply and demand. You need to know the technical aspects of the market, which are emotions driven. In addition to the fundamentals or economic aspect of an investment, does an investment make sense or does it not make sense based on the current market condition? The law, a corporation wrapped around the technical skills of accounting, investing, and markets can contribute to explosive growth, and a person who understands the tax advantage and protection provided by corporations can get rich so much.